Today, as I'm told, is Insurrection Day. At least that's what the mainstream media has been saying, and it's what many conservatives have been saying. Conservatives, people on the right, are arguing against the narrative of insurrection. People on the left are just saying it was an insurrection. The problem here is that always people on the right react to the mainstream narrative instead of setting their own narrative. Sometimes people on the right will set the narrative, but typically they do not. This means that you are always fighting an uphill battle. That's why I've been tweeting something else. I have been tweeting this. Never forget, January 6th, also known as Freedom Day, will forever be the day we remember the 100-day siege on the U.S. From the White House to federal courthouses to small-town America, dozens lost their lives to the Democrat-supported carnage. Now, admittedly, the idea of a Freedom Day didn't come from me. It came from our producer on Timcast IRL, Lydia. You may follow her on Twitter. She said she was going to call it Freedom Day. And I said, it's a good idea. It's a good idea because it's time the right stop just playing in to establishment narratives. Ted Cruz recently came out and said January 6th was a terrorist attack because I guess he doesn't want to win an election ever again. Considering that Texas is dangerously close, it's a purple state for the most part. Well, when he's up for re-election, who knows? It could be, I don't know when he's up for re-election, but assuming things don't change and he stays on this path of towing the establishment narrative instead of what Americans actually care about, yeah, he's probably done. Many people think that Ted Cruz came out and said January 6th was a terror attack because he wants to run for president, but I assure you this, anyone who would say that will never get my vote or my support, and I will actively encourage every single one of you not to vote for Ted Cruz over this. Surely he must have known this. Now, look, Ted Cruz has done some good things, but for the most part, I think the guy has shown himself to be, well, fairly weak. You know, when he went on that vacation during the storm, first of all, why would he go on vacation during, major power outages and freezes happening in Texas or whatever? But even when he did, he should have just owned it. See, that's the thing about Trump. Trump would own it and people liked it. Ted Cruz couldn't do that. He's just trying to be he's trying to pander to an American, a faction in this country, in America, that doesn't want to associate with him, that hates his guts. And therein lies the big problem. Both sides completely hate each other. Both sides, and I know it's not absolute, right? There's disparate factions among the left and the right. Certainly, I'm not a traditional conservative, but they would associate me with the right-wing tribe in this country, and I think that's fair. Absolutely, I'm not in the leftist progressive tribe or the socialist Democrats or the Democratic Socialists. There is a distinction there, and certainly not a fan of the Democrats, though I was in 2019. And it's only because of my belief in individual liberties that I find myself more likely to be aligned with many conservatives, even though I don't agree with them on policy, disparate factions. But I will say, today of all days is a day for the right to just stop engaging with establishment narratives. I know it's somewhat paradoxical, right? Here I am talking about the insurrection, as they call it, and telling you not to talk about it. I suppose the challenge is you've got to plant the seed somewhere. If I just made a video where it was like, today is Freedom Day, people would be like, I don't understand what that is, because they're following the establishment narrative. You can always count on establishment Republicans to toe the line, however. The Daily Beast, I love using this source, says, Tucker scolds Ted Cruz for calling January 6th a terrorist attack. What the hell is going on? You're making us think maybe the Republican Party is as worthless as we suspected it was. That can't be true, Carlson concluded. Reassure us, please, Ted Cruz. The Republican Party, man. Let me tell you guys something. If you missed it, last night on Timcast IRL, we had Marjorie Taylor Greene on the show, and she was fantastic. She was absolutely great. There were a few instances where I felt like we weren't getting strong enough answers, but that's normal, So I have this vision of a politician who's going to be able to answer every question and have an idea for everything, and that just doesn't exist. One of the reasons I really liked Andrew Yang in 2019 is that he did have an answer for so much. And he had an answer for like unionization among MMA fighters. That's incredible. And so I want to be able to say, this is an issue affecting us. What have you proposed? And there were some instances where I felt like the answers weren't too strong. But what the most important thing to me about Marjorie Taylor Greene was she was an outsider. She is an outsider, and she is challenging the machine. When she got in Congress, she told us how they don't even vote. Do you know this? This is crazy to me. They don't even vote. No. Hear me out. What she said is there'll be like 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats, and they'll be like, we have a bill, all in favor. And they'll go, yay, nay. And then some guy bangs a gavel and says it passes or it doesn't. That is not how the system was supposed to work. That is not how things are supposed to be run. And so what she said is that she went down and said, I want a roll call vote. They have to call every single member of Congress in to actually vote. And boy, were they pissed. That's what I love about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is making these people do their jobs. Ted Cruz, on the other hand, what is this? Fox News host Tucker Carlson lambasted Ted Cruz on Wednesday for the unforgivable sin of calling the Capitol insurrection a violent terrorist attack. Ooh. Accusing the ultra-conservative lawmaker of repeating the talking points that Merrick Garland has written. Cruz, one of 8 GOP senators who objected to the certification of President Joe Biden's election on January 6th, drew the wrath of the MAGA faithful on Wednesday when he described the storming of the U.S. Capitol in stark terms. Quote, we are approaching a solemn anniversary this week, Cruz said in a Senate Rules Committee hearing. And it is an anniversary of a violent terrorist attack on the Capitol, where we saw the men and women of law enforcement demonstrate incredible courage, incredible bravery, risk their lives for the Capitol. Those comments did not sit well with Carlson, who has led the charge in downplaying the January 6 riots, while suggesting the Capitol attack is a false flag orchestrated by federal agents in an effort to purge conservative Americans. Well, I don't know about all that. What I can say is the establishment has absolutely used this to their advantage. When it comes to the Republican Party, when it comes to politics, Bernie Sanders led an insurrection within the Democratic Party on the left, and Donald Trump led an insurrection among the Republican Party on the right. Bernie Sanders failed to get in. Donald Trump kicked that door in, and he took his position as the leader of the party. Republican politicians knew they could do nothing. The will of the party be spoken. Regular people who were signing up for the Republican Party, who were coming in, did not like their brand of establishment neocon garbage. They liked Donald Trump. The same was true for populist Democrats and Bernie Sanders. But Bernie Sanders lacked the strength, composure, and, well, let's just admit it, the force of will to actually take this position and become more prominent in the party. Instead, he bent the knee to the establishment. People like Ted Cruz, they never liked Donald Trump. They don't want Donald Trump here. They don't want his voters here. And now they want to do everything in their power to get rid of Donald Trump. But I'm sorry. There is a new wave of independent, moderate American nationalists who have signed up for the Republican Party and are outright saying no to the establishment. I want to show you something. And we'll talk about, Trump's got a statement out, of course. He just put out just before January 6th. Take a look at this from the Daily Beast. Trump's favorite part of January 6th is laughing at the trauma. The former president's callousness toward his real and perceived enemies is standard fare for Trump, who frequently revels in their pain and misfortune in public and in private. No, okay. My friends, it's time you all realized the worldview is so far removed, is so separate between the left and the right, whatever you want to call these factions, that I don't see any way to bring anything together. Trauma from a riot? No, the Capitol riot was bad. It was particularly bad. I mean, you had people actually shut down the Electoral College joint session of the vote count, the joint session of Congress. That's a bad thing. But we had, 100 days of siege on the U.S., the George Floyd riots. We've had people storm the Capitol over Brett Kavanaugh. We had possibly the worst attack on the White House since 1812 when leftists set one of the guard buildings aflame and they tried torching the church. They set the church across the street on fire. What happened during the left's version of the insurrection? A Trump supporter was killed. That's it. That's what happened. So it was bad. But the crazy thing to me is that today, conservatives just once again toe the line of the establishment narrative. Brian Stelter tweeted out how all of the mainstream news networks are covering the insurrection and Fox News isn't. Okay, I thought about that. And I'm like, is it bad? Should Fox News be talking about this day whether critically or otherwise? No, they shouldn't. In a free country with a free market economy, you would not expect all of the news outlets to be saying the exact same things. That doesn't make sense, does it? Brian Stelter is a cult leader. What he is pushing is the cult propaganda line. Think about this for 2 seconds. If all of your media companies are talking about the exact same thing in the exact same way, you are in a cult. Or call it a state religion, call it whatever you want. I think in a free market, you'd have a news network like Fox say, hey guys, every single network is covering this story. Should we? And someone would go, why? We're trying to offer up something of value to the American people. If they can get this from 7 different outlets, well, then let's try and give, an alternative. It would be like if you walk down a street and every building was a Starbucks. That would be insane, wouldn't it? No. You'd expect it to be like a pizza shop, a burger joint, a Starbucks, and maybe there could be 2 different pizza shops. Maybe there are 2 different, cafes, a Starbucks corporate chain and a local coffee mom and pop shop. Maybe in the news, you'll get a handful of outlets saying insurrection and a handful of outlets saying something else. Instead, what we have is the media walking in lockstep, the same narrative, the same lines, and Fox News are the only ones effectively dissenting. And Brian Stelter and CNN will tell you, or insinuate, that's a bad thing. Well, I'll tell you, if half this country does not agree, if half this country feels that Donald Trump is better, we are better off with a Trump presidency, take a look at this. Real Clear Politics, general election, Trump versus Biden. These are polls from just last month. If a general election were held today, Donald Trump would win, not Joe Biden. That means, think about what Brian Stelter is saying. All of these networks are saying insurrection, military coup. All of them. But in aggregate, 46% of this country supports Trump to Biden's 41%. That means despite the mainstream media narrative and everything they're saying about this and every smear they put out against Trump, against populist conservatives, against Marjorie Taylor Greene, the American people support them more. That to me is incredible. And it shows exactly why we need to be focused on what's really going on. Freedom Day, my friends. Freedom Day. Never forget, January 6th, also known as Freedom Day, will forever be the day we remember the 100-day siege on the U.S. from the White House to the federal courthouses to small-town America. Dozens lost their lives to the Democrat-supported carnage. Kamala Harris. She actually raised money for the rioters. Joe Biden's staff actually donated to these rioters. Some very serious and hardened criminals. People died. David Dorn was shot and killed over a TV. Now, if you look at, there's different reporting on this. Initially, they said it was like 32 people that died. Now, I think they say around 24, 26. But then and I think they changed it because initially people were saying, these are how many people died in the riots. And then they were like, well, some of those deaths weren't overtly rioting. So they said that's unrelated. So we have dozens of people dead directly as a result of the riots, maybe even in the mid 30s. And don't these people deserve their day? Shouldn't we be talking about all of those people? Several people died on January 6th. That's true. An officer lost his life the next day for unrelated reasons. At least that's what was reported. I think the New York Times even reported that. Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed by a cop. I believe it was Capitol Police. You had commandos with the authority to shoot to kill. Now we're learning that. Several people, some people fell and died. Some people had heart attacks. It was Trump supporters who died. In this thread from Yossi Gestetner, he says, video of the insurrection at the White House last summer, likely the worst attack since 1812 and appears to be more mayhem than January 6th. I am not aware of a hunt by the feds for those who stood there, as done to the hundreds on January 6th. We have this other tweet from Yossi. He says, January 6th was the worst attack on the Capitol since 1812. Odd, because in 1954, 5 congressmen were wounded on the floor when 4 terrorists opened fire from the visitor area. President Carter later commuted and reduced the sentences. March 1st, 1971. A bomb apparently planted by a group or person protesting against the Vietnam War exploded earlier this morning in the Senate wing of the Capitol, causing extensive damage but no injuries. November 7th, 1983. At 10:58 p.m., a thunderous explosion tore through the second floor of the Capitol's north wing. The force of the device blew off the door to the office of the Democratic leader, Robert C. Byrd. How many bombs went off in the Capitol on January 6? And for that matter, the individual who did plant pipe bombs, how come the FBI hasn't found them yet? Maybe they're trying, maybe they can't, I don't know. Another tweet. Shortly before midnight on Friday, July 2nd, 1915, police responded to the U.S. Capitol where an explosion had just rocked the Senate wing. Haven't seen anything close to this damage from January 6. October 2018, hundreds stormed the U.S. Senate building during the sacred work of confirming a Supreme Court justice for a position that holds longer than a presidential term. 302 were arrested by Capitol Hill police, none by the feds. Summer 2020, POTUS and family are rushed to the White House bunker as insurrectionists scaled fencing, trying to overthrow the government. 60 Secret Service agents were wounded. 11 needed hospital for defending the White House in the worst attack since 1812. July 24th, 1998, 2 Capitol police officers died in line of duty. An armed assailant stormed past a U.S. Capitol security checkpoint. He made it deep into the building where he was shot. And then, of course, he posted the tweet I just showed of people staging an insurrection in front of the White House. They torched a guard building, small building. They set fire to the church. That was an insurrection, right? Not a single person from January 6th has been charged with insurrection. It's all trespassing charges. There's assault on officer charge, and for the most part, it's trespassing. Seriously. But I didn't realize that you could trespass in publicly owned spaces. You know that you can go to the Senate and congressional buildings and walk around whenever you want. That was my understanding, at least. They knew there was a potential for violence, and the violence was wrong. And the people who went there were wrong, and many of them are admitting to this, and they should be prosecuted. But a good portion of these people who were in that building, the doors were opened for them. It's not an exaggeration. The doors were open for them. The violence was a small portion of what was happening on that day. And it was bad. You know, our good friend of the show, Richie McGinnis, was there, and he said it was bad. He was like being crushed between people rioting and these police officers. But in other parts of the building, the police opened the door and said, come on in. Took pictures and took selfies with people. And they would tell you it was an insurrection. So here's the important part I'm trying to get to with all this. We, the people who believe in this country, and I'm not talking about just conservatives. I am not a staunch nationalist. I believe international cooperation and international agreements are a good thing. I believe a one world system of governance is inevitable. However, the way it's happening now is what's nightmarish. And I've heard something similar from many people on the right, that it may be we are headed towards a one world government, but America needs to retain the rights over its borders and itself. Meaning, sure, we have a UN. Sure, we have a world court. Sure, we have Interpol and all of these things. But the United States is sovereign, sets its own rules and its own laws. What happens outside these borders? Sure, we'll come to international agreements. Everyone agrees with that. But what we're seeing from the establishment is this authoritarian globalist push. So for me, I'm not a staunch conservative. I'm not a staunch nationalist. I'm not a ardent Trump defender where I think everything he does is great. No, I think Trump does a lot of bad things. I'm just someone who thinks in this country, we vote for our politicians. We have referendums to vote on certain laws. We are entitled to our individual and inalienable rights. And if we want to have a discussion outside of that, sure. But in the U.S., that is what must be protected. And we're not getting it. We're getting a manipulative, authoritarian, globalist regime, I guess it is. Establishment elites, powerful politicians, revolving door policies. You have massive multinational corporations subverting the will of the people and our rights. And this divide and conquer that seems to be working. We need to make sure that those of us who believe in American sovereignty, be it whether you're a hardcore nationalist or isolationist, and I have friends who are isolationists, or you're not. We need to make sure we set our own narratives. We need to make sure that we are not playing into the hands of the New York Times and CNN and just saying what they want to say, because even when you argue against them, they control the narrative. Why don't we call the George Floyd riots the insurrection? Why not? And look at Wikipedia. They don't even call it the George Floyd riots. They call it George Floyd protests. Isn't that insane? There were riots. Shouldn't we have an article about the riots specifically? They changed the name. They call it the protests now. And you have Michelle Obama and all these other people saying that it was a mostly peaceful. And then they criticize you when you mention that January 6th was not an insurrection. This is where we are. You need to understand the power of narrative. When we have people on the show, you know, on Timcast IRL, there are a lot of people say, why are you platforming left-wing ideas? And I'm like, you don't get it. It's if you can show the proof, if you can argue better, then it doesn't matter their ideas are being heard. What matters is that people are hearing something new. A tweet of mine criticizing vaccine mandates made it to the top of all on Reddit for every post on the website, number one. And it was murdered by words, they call it. Apparently, Hassan, the leftist streamer, was criticizing me when I said, I had said that the Holocaust Museum requiring a vaccine mandate to get in is the best way to explain to people the definition of irony, situational irony. You know, papers, please. And Hassan said, you think the most important part of the Holocaust was this, blah, 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 which I never said. So a lot of people were like, you shouldn't be happy about that, Tim. You know, they're making you look bad. And I was like, no, look at the comments. Sure, the top comments on Reddit are usually leftist, but if you sorted by new, watching comments come in real time, people were saying, I don't understand. That is ironic. I don't understand this. Who's this Tim Pool guy? He's right. He didn't say it was the worst thing about the Holocaust. He didn't say it was the most important. He was just pointing out irony. You see, even when they think they're criticizing you, they're still putting your position out there. Now, the same thing is true for people who come on my show. I know, I get it. But I think my ideas are better. I think I can argue against a lot of what they say. And if that's the case, I'm not worried about anyone hearing what a leftist on my show has to say. The same is true for my post being on Reddit. I don't care what Hassan said. It looked ridiculous. I disagree with him. He wasn't addressing my point. My point was a joke about irony. So I'm glad people see it. You guys need to stop letting the establishment control the narrative. However you do it. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.